Pirates. My name is Luffy. Chapter 31. Just as Luffy and his group were walking out, they suddenly heard a commotion outside. When they walked to the gate of the yard, they saw dozens of villagers blocking the yard of Nami's house a dozen meters away. A middle-aged man wearing a captain's hat with a windmill on it opened his arms and roared at the dozen Navy officers in front of him. You can't go in. That money is the hard-earned money she has accumulated over the years to save this village. Do you want to take this money too? The dozens of villagers standing behind him all glared at the dozen Navy officers in front of them. Hearing what this man said, the Navy captain pointed at the windmill man and shouted. Are you going to disobey the Navy's orders? Who do you think I am? I am a naval colonel. If you dare to resist, you will be treated as a rebel. Seeing that these Navy men were determined to break in, the man with the windmill on his hat shouted in a deep voice. You, the Navy, have ignored Arlong's exploitation and oppression of our village over the years. Now you are planning to take Nami's hard-earned money. Why aren't you usually so dedicated? Besides, Nami is a cadre of Arlong's group. Aren't you afraid of Arlong's revenge by doing this? Using pirates to threaten the Navy, the man himself felt disgusted when he said this. However, this also intensified the anger in his heart. Hearing this, the mouse colonel pinched his beard and laughed. Aaron's revenge. Ha 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 ha, how do you think we knew she stole the pirates' money? Of course Aaron told me, idiot. What? Both the windmill man and the villagers behind him were dumbfounded after hearing Colonel Mouse's words. Aaron told me. How much meaning is contained in this sentence? No wonder no matter how many times they reported to the Navy in the past 8 years, it had no effect. No wonder the Navy in the East China Sea allowed them to be exploited and oppressed for 8 years. So, is this really the case? All the villagers were so angry that their eyes were bloodshot. They clenched their fists and yelled at the Navy. You, the Navy, are colluding with pirates. Shameless. The Navy. You don't want to give us a chance to live, right? Since they don't want us to live, let's fight them to the death. Kill these Marines. Kill them. Kill the group of fishmen who played with Nami's kindness. Kill. As the villagers roared, more and more villagers gathered. Almost at the same time, after understanding the cause and effect, all the villagers' eyes instantly turned red. Unforgivable. For a while, the shouts of killing shook the sky. Colonel Mouse and the group of Navy officers were also stunned. They didn't know why a random sentence could make these villagers so angry. Aaron and his men had exploited them for so many years, but they had never reacted like this. Colonel Mouse and the dozen or so Navy officers had cold sweat on their foreheads. Although they were not afraid of these civilians, they could not withstand the siege of hundreds of people. They were careless. Kill. With the windmill man's roar, hundreds of villagers rushed forward. The dozen or so Navy officers and the rat colonel only screamed, and were immediately drowned by the vast sea of people. Kill Aaron. Yes. We can't let go of those fishmen either. They all must die if they dare to play with our Nami's kindness. The murderous villagers were ready to rush towards Aaron's base in groups. At this moment, a voice that was very familiar to them came from behind them, which immediately cooled down the anger of the crowd. Everyone, I'm back. Isn't it just the Navy and the pirates colluding? It's just a small matter, don't be impulsive. The angry villagers looked in the direction of the voice and saw Nami wearing a straw hat, showing a forced smile and continued. Let's deal with these Navy first. Otherwise, we will offend the Navy as well. Ajien, Nokigo, why are you so impulsive? Hearing Nami's words, the villagers, whose anger had cooled down a little, became angry again. Ajien smiled at Nami and said in a deep voice. We can endure it for the sake of life. But how dare they play with our Nami's kindness? Even if I die, I will not allow it. After hearing what Ajien said, the villagers shouted. Yes. Even if we die, we won't allow them to hurt our Nami. Everyone. Nami was so moved when she heard what they said that she burst into tears. She couldn't say anything to comfort them. Nokiko smiled at Nami and said. Nami, please leave the village. This time, you can't stop us. After saying that, she joined the roaring villagers and walked away quickly. At this time, Luffy, who was standing behind Nami, came out, raised his hand and pressed it on Nami's head and said calmly. Nami, did you hear me? This is the cry of the people. Where there is oppression, there is resistance. This is the resentment created by the world government's order for 800 years. It cannot be suppressed. Just like the Kokoyasi village, one day the people's resentment will completely erupt. At that time, an unstoppable historical torrent will be born and swallow everything. And for the villagers of Kokoyasi village, you are the last straw that broke the camel's back. Quote. As for the name of the torrent, Luffy called it, revolution. But it's too early to say this word. Any class contradiction must be observed and experienced with one's own eyes, and then analyzed before a conclusion can be drawn. For now, Luffy will not utter these two words. Revolution is not a dinner party. If there is no practical program, if there is no effective principle, if there is no perfect and complete law, Luffy will never touch it easily. This is why One Piece is just a small goal for him. Let's wait until we meet him in Rogue Town. Sanji, Zoro, Usopp and Kin fell into deep thought after hearing Luffy's words. They all had a feeling that their captain had more to say. At this time, Luffy's words seemed to be the only pillar for Nami. She immediately grabbed Luffy's hand and said hurriedly, Luffy, what should we do? They have already run far away. We must stop them, otherwise, they will be killed by Arlong and the others. He. Luffy put his arm around Nami's waist and grinned. What do you think we are doing here? Do you think we need to care about a mere fishman, Aaron? Don't worry, I like the bravery of the villagers in Kekoyasi village and will never let anything happen to them. Let the bullets fly for a while. Standing at the gate of Nami's courtyard, Luffy turned to look at Zoro and said, Hey, Zoro, don't make trouble for yourself. Just have a good sleep at Nami's house. Otherwise, you will get blood everywhere. The aggravation of your injuries will affect your improvement in strength. Zoro wanted to refuse at first, but he shut his mouth immediately after hearing the last sentence. Sanji was happy when he heard it. That's right, Green Algae Head, we can easily deal with those stinky fish people without you. What did you say, jerk, perverted cook? Zoro, who was about to walk back, instantly butted his head against Sanji's. Usopp and Kin had already ignored him. At the beginning, they wanted to stop the fight. But the two had quarreled countless times in the past 2 days. Luffy laughed, and the next moment bursts of white steam suddenly emerged from his body. Hey, Luffy, what are you doing? Usopp looked at him puzzled. Luffy smiled mysteriously. Let me show you guys something fun. Swoosh. Pa. After saying that, Luffy put his right hand around Nami's waist, and suddenly stretched out his left hand to wrap around Usopp, Kin, and Sanji, and jumped directly into the air under the shocked gazes of the four of them. Hey. Mr. Luffy. Luffy, what do you want to do? Ah. Bang. Immediately, Zoro looked at Usopp, Sanji and Kin, who were flying in the sky as if suspended, with a look of relief on his face, and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Fortunately, I am injured. Nami hugged Luffy's neck tightly and flew forward screaming. Ha. Luffy's laughter echoed in the sky. Moon Step is a really good skill, right? Usopp, Sanji and Kin, you should learn it well in the future. Oh, by the way, Nami, point me in a direction. The three were speechless when they heard Luffy's words. You don't even know the direction, what the hell are you doing? Do you know that if you are not careful, someone might die? Is this the time to say this, asshole? Hold on tight. Mr. Luffy, falling from this height could be fatal. From now on, I will definitely learn the moon step well. The one with a very tall tower-like house over there is Arlong's territory. After seeing Nami's guidance, Luffy immediately accelerated and stepped on a few air explosions in the air before leaping forward quickly. His acceleration frightened Sanji and the other three so much that they held Luffy's arms tightly, fearing that they would fall and break into pieces. Soon, Luffy saw Arlong's territory in the distance, and on the road not far from the territory, 400 or 500 villagers were holding various weapons and howling as they advanced quickly towards Arlong's territory. Oh, Luffy, it's my sister and Ken. Nami, who was hugging Luffy's neck, also heard the noise below. She smiled when she looked down. Now Nami has completely relaxed because she knows that with Luffy's strength, it will be absolutely no problem for him to deal with Arlong and the others. After relaxing, she naturally became playful when she saw this scene. Then she waved her hand and said, Everyone, you are walking so slowly. The crowd below was stunned for a moment after hearing Nami's voice. Nokiko turned his head in confusion and looked at Aegean beside him and smiled. Ah Jien, am I hallucinating? Why do I seem to hear Nami's voice calling us? Maybe it's because I haven't seen her for too long and I miss her too much. I don't know if I will have the chance to see her again. Aegean was stunned for a moment. I heard it too. Seeing some people below looking around, Nami couldn't help but laugh again and shouted. Everyone, look up, I'm above you. Sorry, I have to go first. By the time you come over, Eren will have almost solved it. Shua. The villagers heard it clearly, and everyone looked up and saw Nami flying in the sky with Luffy in her arms. Nani. The villagers below were all stunned. When had they ever seen someone flying in the sky? Especially since it was Nami they knew. My eyes are opened. Looking at the villagers below, Luffy's eyes suddenly lit up. After descending more than 10 meters, he looked at Nokiko and said. Hey, Nokiko, you don't want Ken and the villagers to die in vain, do you? Well, comrade, you can call me Luffy. We will take care of the rest. Of course, you can come and watch the fun. After all, the destruction of the Arlong Empire needs someone to witness it. Okay, I'll go first. Swoosh. Bang bang bang. After saying that, Luffy once again accelerated and stomped on several air blasts before leaping over 100 meters away. The villagers behind him were stunned. Fortunately, 300 meters away was Arlong's base. They also heard what Luffy said, and at this time they suddenly believed that Luffy might really be able to do what he said. After all, they had never seen anyone flying in the sky. And flying with so many people. At this time, they suddenly reacted again. Wait, how come the boy named Luffy's arms can be extended? Oh, yes, that's what I was just about to say. So scary. If I'm not mistaken, the young man named Luffy may have eaten something called a devil fruit. Ah. Is this the legendary secret treasure of the sea? After eating such a precious thing, it is reasonable to defeat Eren, right? The villagers' confidence increased a little bit, and they started to run faster than before. Bang, bang, bang. Luffy and his friends also arrived at the entrance of Arlong's base. As soon as they were put down, Usopp sat on the ground with weak legs and yelled at Luffy. Hey Luffy, how can I fight like this? No, my legs are weak, the rest of the battle is up to you. I will cheer you up. Sanji lit a cigarette and glanced at Usopp. Is that a lie? Nani? You actually saw through me. Usopp jumped up in shock. Akin sighed helplessly. Luffy looked at Nami and said. Then should I start? Or should I wait for your friends? Nami looked at Luffy in surprise and said. Why are you waiting for them? How can I show off in front of others if the villagers don't come? Luffy stared at Nami. Nami glanced at Luffy, then grabbed the brim of her straw hat with both hands, and pounced on Luffy and bit his mouth while Sanji, Usopp and Kin were stunned. The two of them ignored everyone and started biting him on the side of the road. Hey, you two. What are you doing in broad daylight? Usopp jumped up and pointed at Luffy, you. Jealousy made Sanji look unrecognizable. Jin's eyes widened, obviously he didn't expect this to happen. After a while, Nami grabbed the brim of the straw hat with both hands, lowered her head and shouted. Don't you know Luffy's fruit ability? Just like this, his ability will become stronger. This is how I helped him become stronger in the beginning. Luffy gave them a thumbs up. That's right. I don't believe you. Jealousy caused Sanji to break apart. If you don't believe me, just look. Luffy raised his fist. I can easily smash this gate with one punch. Watch out. Rubber, ordinary punch. After saying that, Luffy really punched the heavy stone gate under the stunned eyes of the three people. Boom. But in the next moment, the stone gate seemed to be made of tofu, and was directly bombed by Luffy's ordinary punch. The villagers who just ran over from behind also saw this scene, and everyone's eyes widened. It was full of disbelief. With such a light punch, a hole more than 10 meters wide was blasted directly in Arlong's several meter wide gate and wall. Not only were they shocked, but even the fishmen who were resting in the yard looked at Luffy and his team with a confused look. There were also several fishmen who were close to the gate who were directly knocked unconscious by the huge rubble. Luffy did not hesitate, stepped in, glanced around at the fishmen present and sighed. Wow, so many murlocs, so scary. The fishmen who were playing in the water or on the shore were suddenly startled by the explosive roar. The fishmen standing at the door were knocked unconscious by the rocks smashed by Luffy. Two of them flew directly to Arlong, who was lying under the tower house. Arlong, who was resting with his eyes closed, was also awakened by the sound. When he saw the two fishmen beside him, he immediately helped them up and asked in shock. Fellow countrymen. My fellow countrymen, what's wrong with you? Just as Aaron opened his mouth, he heard a very mean voice coming in. Wow, so many fishmen, so scary. Hearing this voice, Aaron immediately glanced over with indifference, and then he saw a boy wearing a red vest, blue shorts, and slippers slowly walking in. Behind him on both sides was a blond man smoking a cigarette, a man holding two strange weapons, and two more people hiding in the middle behind the three of them. I almost didn't see. Woohoo, there are so many fishmen, which one is A-Long? Come and die. Mr. Sanji, Arlong is Captain Luffy, we just need to deal with those small fry. You. Come on. Seeing this, the fishmen in Arlong's base looked at them with indifference, anger, or curiosity. Nami. Along soon saw Nami wearing a straw hat behind Luffy and the others, and asked in confusion, then laughed out loud. Ha ha. Nami, you called these guys here, don't you want to attack us? It seems that I have neglected to discipline you over the years. Kill. But before Nami could say anything, there was a shocking shout from the road not far behind her. Hearing such a loud shout, even Aaron and the others changed their expressions slightly. All the fishmen turned their eyes to the group of villagers rushing over outside. Hey, hey, hey. I thought it was reinforcements coming from somewhere. Ha ha ha, they are just a bunch of villagers. I was shocked. I thought they were the Navy. What are they doing here? Are they looking for death? You actually want to rebel against our Dragon Empire. It seems that I have been too good to them over the years, and I must show my authority today. The fishmen also shouted loudly. Luffy glanced at the fishmen and exclaimed. Fishman, so scary. Nami, Usopp, go outside and stop those villagers from coming in, just leave this to us. Nami now knows Luffy's strength, so she naturally has great confidence in him. In addition, she has just given him a reward, so she thinks it should be no problem to beat Arlong, right? After all, even without the reward, he was evenly matched with Hawkeye. Oh. I leave it to you, but be careful, they are still very strong. Nami said and ran outside with Usopp. However, what no one expected was that Usopp, who ran outside, poked his head out from another hole in the wall and launched the first attack on the Arlong pirates. The ultimate killer, Gunpowder Star. Swish, swish, swish. Following Usopp's low shout, the fishman named Ju, who had just emerged from the water, was immediately hit on the head by several gunpowder stars. Boom boom boom. Ah! A series of explosions exploded on Ju's head, causing him to scream in agony. Have. Come after me if you dare. Usopp, wearing goggles, pointed at Chu with trembling legs. Gurgle. After burying his head in the sea water to extinguish the flames on his forehead, Chu looked at Usopp with a look of murderous intent and growled. I'm going to kill you. Whoosh. Then, Chu jumped out of the sea and rushed towards Usopp. Usopp turned around and ran, yelling at Luffy. Luffy, the rest is up to you. Luffy didn't say anything after hearing that, but just raised his lips slightly. Sanji and Kin were stunned for a moment. They never thought that Usopp, who was usually timid and deceitful, would be the first to take action at this time. And if they remembered correctly, this guy named Ju was one of the cadres of the Arlong pirates. He was a vicious guy with a bounty of 5.5 million Baileys. They even looked at the bounty before they came. Sanji remembered that he asked Usopp at that time. Why do you remember the bounty officer of the Arlong pirates so clearly? Usopp smiled and gave a thumbs up. Of course, we should avoid running into these guys at that time. Sanji raised the corner of his mouth slightly while smoking. Usopp you. Agent's eyes were slightly condensed, and his hand holding the iron baseball tightened a little. Nami looked at the direction where Usopp left with concern, and then turned to look at Luffy. Luffy smiled slightly and said, Nami, don't worry, Usopp is not a weak guy. Arlong, who is far away, laughed and said, not weak. You'll be the one collecting his corpse. I don't know how Nami tricked you here, but unfortunately, this is where you'll die today. Jingin, Shioyagi, and Ju, the three of you go up and try to kill that kid. Yes. Brother Arlong. Then a golden fin mermaid, a gray fin mermaid holding a wine jug, and a pink fin mermaid wearing a shirt jumped out of the water at the same time and walked towards Luffy. When Sanji and King Kong were about to make a move, Luffy took the lead and rushed forward. Seeing this, the two of them looked at each other and did not move for the time being. Then, the golden fin mermaid named King Root immediately rushed towards Luffy, and at a fast speed, he punched Luffy in the face and laughed fiercely. Kid, go to hell. Luffy just slightly turned his body, then raised his fist and punched the fishman on the back, directly smashing the fishman's body into a bow shape. Bang! Boom! The next moment, the golden fishman was smashed into the ground by Luffy without even a scream and passed out. A human-shaped pit suddenly exploded on the ground. The stone floor cracked with the pit as the center. The two fishmen who rushed up seeing this scene screamed in surprise. Golden roots. But before they could make any move, Luffy's voice rang out between the two fishmen who were just halfway through. Wow, fishmen, so scary. The two fish subconsciously looked back and saw two ordinary fists hitting their faces. Bang! Boom! Boom! There were two more loud noises, stone chips flew, and the two fishmen fell to the ground instantly. Like the golden root before, Yanxiao and Zhang also smashed a huge human-shaped pit on the opposite side of the stone slab, spitting out a mouthful of blood and fainted directly. Fellow countrymen. Aaron, the other two fishmen cadres, Xiao Ba, and Kruby roared in anger. Wow, the fishman is angry, so scary. The villagers outside were frightened when they saw Arlong and the others were angry. After all, they had seen how scary Arlong was when he was angry. But after hearing Luffy's words, the villagers couldn't help but show a strange and shocked look on their faces. This guy. He keeps saying how scary he is. He can kill a fishman with one punch, right? You are the scariest guy, okay. Wow. Seeing Luffy kill a fishman with one punch, the group of villagers outside who were just watching the show couldn't help but be shocked. Hey, what's with that weird power? With just one punch, he knocked those monster-like fishmen unconscious. Are these still the terrifying fishmen we have seen? Isn't this too strong? That's a fishman. Those three guys are considered the leaders of the Arlong pirates, but I didn't expect that they couldn't even withstand Luffy's punch. They are too strong. Nami, where did you find such a reliable partner? But it is true that Arlong and the others have not made a move yet, so don't be too happy yet. At this time, Arlong and the others also knew that Luffy and the others were not simple in strength. Glancing at Luffy and the other two, Arlong said to Hachi and Kruby beside him. Xiao Ba, you and Kruby deal with the two people behind that guy. Let me deal with this guy. Yes, brother Arlong. Hachi and Kruby responded and went to find Kin and Sanji respectively. Luffy did not choose to stop them at this time. After all, he still had to give Sanji and the others a chance to level up. Looking at Hachi who was looking for Kin, Luffy narrowed his eyes and said. Ah Jin, save that Xiao Ba's life later, it will be useful in the future. Ah Jin was stunned for a moment, but still nodded and said. Good job Captain. Ah Jin. Aaron was stunned for a moment when he heard the name, then he seemed to remember something, turned to Ah Jin and said in a deep voice. If I remember correctly, you should be Ajin, the ghost under Click. I didn't expect you to change the captain. Ajin glanced at Aaron and said indifferently. Yes, Mr. Luffy is my captain now. Ha. No wonder he's so arrogant. It turns out he defeated that Crick. Arlong grinned at Luffy, revealing his fangs. Don't you know that we fishmen are invincible on the sea? Why didn't the great pirate Crick dare to enter my Aaron's territory? I tell you, he was worried that his fleets would be broken up by his fishmen. You think you can defeat me if you defeat such a loser? A dog without a home, a fool, go to hell. Aaron broke the stone pillar of the house in front of him with a punch and laughed. Ha. Who doesn't have this strength? Luffy shook his head and sighed. As expected of a fishman, so scary. Along. The four people on the other side have already started fighting. Fishman Karate 100 Wall Punch. Head meat, shoulder meat, brisket. 6 swords style. Arlong glanced at Luffy and sneered. Forget it, there is no point in talking anymore. Go to hell. On gear car. With Arlong's sudden roar, he suddenly turned around and bit Luffy from more than 10 meters away. Woohoo, a shark bit someone, it's terrible. Luffy jumped to the pavilion where Arlong had rested before and grinned at Arlong. You can't run away. On gear car. Arlong launched again and chased. Bang. Crack. Crack. However, this time Luffy only moved 2 steps to the side, and Arlong bit the stone pillar behind him directly. Then, in front of everyone's shocked eyes, Arlong actually bit the stone pillar as thick as a person to pieces. Boom. The stone pillar several meters high and as thick as a person collapsed with a loud bang after Arlong's bite, and countless cracks appeared. Seeing this scene, the villagers outside also screamed in surprise. Terrible. What's wrong with Aaron's teeth? They can even bite such a big stone pillar into pieces. What if it bites someone? However, Nami seemed extremely calm. She knew that Luffy was not serious and was just playing around. After all, she had seen how terrifying Luffy's true strength was 2 days ago. Now Arlong could no longer bring her any fear. She had not expected that her nightmares could no longer cause her any waves. Seeing Luffy teasing Arlong, she relaxed and even walked to a rock to sit down, with one hand on her knee and the other hand on her chin, watching Sanji and Ajin fight seriously. The villagers were speechless when they saw Nami looking so leisurely. Your partners are fighting for you, is it really okay for you to be so leisurely? Bang bang bang. Boom. Clang clang clang. After Sanji and Kruby fought for a while, Kruby obviously suffered a lot, and so did Xiaoba and Ajin. Aaron also saw this scene, and felt something was wrong, and immediately shouted. Moo. Hearing Aaron's roar, the villagers' faces suddenly changed. It's over, Aaron called that monster. That Sea King is coming out. Mr. Luffy, you must be careful, Moo is a huge Sea King. The villagers shouted. In the passage connecting to the open sea, the water surface was gradually bulging, and a huge black shadow appeared under the water. Splash. The next moment, a Sea King with a bull-like head rushed out of the water. Moo. This roar, along with the Sea King's height of more than 10 meters and its huge body, seemed extremely terrifying. For ordinary people, it was indeed an invincible monster. Woohoo, how scary. Luffy still laughed and said. I didn't expect that you fishmen can summon Sea Kings. Fishmen are so scary. Each one is as strong as a monster. When Arlong heard Luffy's words, his mouth kept twitching. Who is the monster? Arlong roared at Moo with anger. Moo, kill him. Moo. Hearing Arlong's voice, Moo immediately roared and rushed towards Luffy who was not far from the water. Luffy, run. The villagers shouted. But Luffy didn't move at all, as if he was scared. But when Moo got closer and closer to him, everyone saw Luffy slowly raised his fist and said calmly. Rubber, ordinary punch. Immediately, he punched Moo who was rushing towards him. Bang. Boom. The next moment, under the horrified gaze of everyone, the huge Sea King Moo flew backwards at a speed faster than the one that hit Luffy. It flew dozens of meters on the sea surface, smashed the wall of Arlong's base, and flew to the sea surface dozens of meters away, motionless. Nani. The villagers of Kokoyasi opened their mouths wide, their eyes almost popped out. At this moment, Luffy turned around and looked at Arlong, who was also horrified, and said calmly. All right, Aaron. The fun is over. Next, I will end your sinful life. In the other forest, Chu chased Usopp and yelled. If you can, don't run. If you have the guts, don't chase me. Usopp ran away very fast. So fast that even Chu was stunned. He had never imagined that he would only be beaten all the way. Now there were traces of gunpowder star explosions on Chu's head and body. The most recent time, he was sprayed with wine and oil, which made him sick. If Usopp hadn't been mocking him all the time, he really wouldn't bother to chase him. The reason why Usopp could run so fast was that Luffy urged him to practice shaving. Usopp seemed unreliable, but he never fell behind in practicing shaving during this period. Must kill, gunpowder stars. With Usopp's roar, Chu was so scared that he immediately hid behind a big tree. But after waiting for a while, there was no movement. He stuck his head out and looked around, but there was no trace of Usopp. How dare you lie to me? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. After realizing that he had been deceived, Chu's face immediately turned red. He rushed to the stream beside the forest, took a big gulp of water, and then fired indiscriminately into the forest. Bang, bang, bang. As the water was spit out like bullets, it immediately knocked down several trees. Usopp was also shocked when he saw this scene. Come out. You liar, come out. Fortunately, Usopp had already run behind Chu, and after Chu had sprayed out all the water in his stomach in one breath, while he was gasping for breath and yelling, Usopp immediately seized the opportunity to attack. The ultimate move, Gunpowder Stars. At this moment, Usopp's voice came from behind Chu. Not good. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Boom boom boom. Because Kegyu had just used his ultimate move, he had no time to react and was immediately hit by a series of gunpowder stars. His body was injured by the explosion and the wine and oil on his body were burned. Ah! The guy was on fire, screaming in pain and running around. But this guy was lucky. He suddenly crashed into a stream and the flames on his body gradually died out. When he stood up, his body was charred, his skin and flesh were rolled up, and his body was covered with burns. It was extremely horrible. Cough cough. I must kill you. Chu looked up and saw Usopp appearing more than 10 meters in front of him with a serious expression, but at this time he was holding a dagger in his hand. You are dead, human. With a loud roar, he immediately bent down and began to swallow the stream water. Why? You are too murderous. I didn't want to do this. Well, I'll use the trump card I've kept hidden for so long on you. Shave. Usopp clenched the dagger in his hand, and as he finished speaking, he disappeared from the spot the next moment. Ju, who was lowering his head to absorb water while paying attention to Usopp's movements, was stunned for a moment and forgot to absorb water for a while. Where is the person? Where is such a big living person? Puff. Just when Ju reacted, a dagger had already been inserted into his heart, and at the same time, Usopp's slightly pale face appeared in front of him. You. Shave. Although Chu was shocked, he was still ready to fight back before he died, but before he could open his mouth, Usopp disappeared in front of him again. Poof. Seeing this scene, Chu was so angry that his blood rushed up, and after spitting out a mouthful of blood, he fell directly into the stream and did not move. Usopp, who appeared on the other side, looked pale, but did not come over. Must kill, Gunpowder Star. Must kill weapon, Gunpowder Star. Special move, Gunpowder Stars. Kill the Kadri without any damage. How terrible is it to have an ADC with no cooldown flash? Usopp has opened up a new evolutionary path. Boom boom boom. Instead, he picked up the slingshot again and fired more than a dozen gunpowder stars. He then slowly breathed a sigh of relief and fell to the ground. There was no other way. He ran too fast and was too tired from the two shavings. At the same time, inside the Along stronghold. Want to kill me? Just because you are a lowly human. Ha 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 ha. Stop joking, you lowly human. Arlong laughed with his head raised. Luffy looked at Arlong calmly and said. To be honest, I have no ill feelings towards you Murlocs. I even treat all intelligent humanoids equally. Of course, people like you who not only have low self-esteem but also feel superior to others are not included in the scope. The evil consequences you have done are only to satisfy your inner self-indulgence. Aren't the Sabayati archipelago just above you Murlocs? You are so arrogant, and you Murlocs are so strong and advanced, why don't you just rob the Sabayati archipelago? Why do you hide in the East China Sea, which is the weakest of the four seas? To put it bluntly, you are no different from most of the rulers of this world. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong, enslaving the people, feudal remnants, and blood-sucking civilians. You say that humans are lowly, but you do the same bad things as those human rulers. Quote. Hearing Luffy's words, Arlong's body trembled, his expression suddenly became uncertain, and then he roared at Luffy. What do you, a mere human, know? Stop talking big to me. Go to hell. On Gear Car. Facing Arlong's angry attack, Luffy had no intention of dodging this time. Arlong was too weak for him now. Go to hell. Arlong, you are too weak. Luffy calmly raised his fist again and punched down in front of everyone's shocked eyes. Bang. Boom. Arlong, who rushed forward, was hit hard in the face by Luffy's punch, causing a large dent in his face instantly, his teeth and blood spurted out, and his body smashed a huge dent in the ground. However, Arlong was different from those cadres, and his body was much more resistant to blows. Although he did not faint completely under Luffy's punch, most of his bones were broken and he could not move at all. You. Cough cough cough. You are a monster. Arlong coughed up blood and looked at Luffy in horror. Luffy walked to Arlong calmly and looked down at him. Arlong, you have become the person you hate the most. If Fisher Tiger knew, he would be very disappointed, right? Arlong's pupils shrank suddenly, and he stared at Luffy in disbelief. You. How do you know Brother Tiger? Who the hell are you? Xiaoba and Kruby also found that something was wrong with Eren and wanted to rush over. Eren. Brother Eren. Where are you looking? Octopus. You think I don't exist? Lamb shoot. Bang bang bang. But Hachi and Kruby were already at a disadvantage, and now they were distracted and immediately found an opportunity for Ajin and Sanji to kill them with a combo. Who am I? Luffy raised his hand to touch the straw hat, but then he remembered that the straw hat was still on Nami's head, and he almost couldn't hold his expression. You don't need to know. You. Crack. Boom. Before Arlong could finish his words, his neck was broken by Luffy's foot. At the same time, the ground roared again. Stone chips flew everywhere. The already sunken ground sunk several dozen centimeters deeper. Arlong's neck was twisted into a strange shape, and he lay there motionless with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. Nami. Luffy turned his back to Nami and the others and yelled, then turned sideways to look at Nami, who looked dazed and unbelievable, and grinned. The Dragon Empire was shattered as promised. From now on, for 10,000 years, you can all remember my name. Monkey D. Luffy. Nami was shocked when she heard this, then she raised her hand to cover her mouth and nodded heavily. Ah! The villagers outside the courtyard wall saw this scene and held their heads in disbelief and shouted excitedly. Eren. Eren is dead. Ah! We are finally freed. Ha 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 ha, it's been 8 years. Do you know how I spent these 8 years? I didn't expect that it wasn't the Navy that helped us drive away Arlong, but the pirates who helped us get rid of Arlong. It's really too ironic. Woohoo, this fishman. Mom and Dad, Eren has finally been defeated. Long live Mr. Luffy. Long live Mr. Luffy. Long live Mr. Luffy. After hearing Luffy's voice, all the villagers excitedly began to roar as if to vent their anger. Then someone shouted, Long live Mr. Luffy. The villagers' shouts gradually became uniform, and the sound shook the sky. Nami looked at the man who was smiling at her. She slowly stood up, took 1 step and 2 steps, and then ran directly. When she was still a few meters away from Luffy, she flew towards him. Hey! You're worried. Luffy immediately stepped forward and hugged Nami's waist and held her in his arms. Ha 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 ha. Luffy, you're awesome. I love you so much. Nami looked at the man in front of her, and the more she looked at him, the more she loved him. Then she raised her left foot, slightly hooked her right calf, held Luffy's cheek with both hands and kissed him. Sanji, who was originally ready to rush up to celebrate, stood aside with a pout, but his eyes were full of smiles. Jin listened to the cheers of all the villagers and smiled immediately. He felt that he was not following the wrong person. Just as the villagers were celebrating wildly, Usopp dragged Chu back to the road. Looking at the excited villagers in the distance, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then, after understanding what happened, he jumped up excitedly and shouted. As expected of you, Luffy. Soon, his shouting startled some of the older villagers who couldn't squeeze in to celebrate. Those villagers turned around and saw Usopp, who was in a mess, looking at the fishman in his hand, and they cheered for him. Brother, you actually killed a leader of the Arlong pirates. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, you guys, thank you so much. The elderly villagers started to cry as they talked, and then they knelt down in front of Usopp. Usopp's smile froze, and he dropped the gun in his hand and rushed over to support the elderly people, laughing. Grandpa and Grandma, I can't stand your kneeling. If our captain knew, he would definitely beat me to death. Crash. But before Usopp could finish his words, he saw the 400 or 500 villagers in front of him who were shouting, Long live Mr. Luffy, actually knelt down in unison. Hey! Luffy! Luffy, who was kissing Nami in the distance, suddenly heard Sanji's voice. Luffy opened his eyes and saw the scene. He couldn't help but restrain his smile, patted the back of Nami's head, then let go of Nami and jumped to the top of the stone pavilion under the tower. Under the watchful eyes of Sanji, Nami, Akin and Usopp, as well as Zoro who had just walked here and was worried, as well as 400 or 500 villagers, and even Colonel Mouse, who was covered in scars and hiding in the dark in the woods to take pictures, and a group of Navy. Luffy took a deep breath, opened his arms and shouted. Don't kneel. Kneel before the heaven, kneel before the earth, kneel before your parents. Apart from them, no one in this world is worthy of your kneeling. In this world, everyone is equal. I defeated Eren and the others not to make you kneel before me. I just fulfilled my promise to my companions, that's all. Please stand up, everyone. I am Monk D. Luffy, I don't need anyone to kneel down to make me stand out. I am who I am. After hearing Luffy's words, the villagers who were kneeling to express their gratitude slowly stood up one by one, but the gratitude in their eyes did not decrease but increased, and there was even a hint of respect in them. Even Colonel Mouse and the Navy who took the sneak shots were slightly stunned after hearing these words. Zoro smiled slightly while holding his sword. You are worthy of it, Luffy. Sanji and Kin looked at each other, and saw the smile in each other's eyes, as well as the respect. This is the captain they want to follow. After seeing the villagers standing up one after another, Luffy smiled, raised his arms and shouted. That's right. Now that Arlong has fallen, let's have a party to celebrate. Let's have a party, brothers. Oh oh oh. After hearing Luffy's words, Sanji and the others shouted excitedly, and the villagers were also infected by Luffy's smile. The villagers who were still crying showed happy smiles, and then cheered in unison. Let's have a party. This banquet was held at Arlong's base. In Luffy's words, when Arlong was alive, they couldn't live in such a good place. If he couldn't live there after he died, wouldn't Arlong have died in vain? Why can he live there, but we can't? Luffy didn't have the idea of demolishing this building. Such a good place, after repairing it, can be used as a landscape or a hotel in the future, and become one of the sources of income for Cocoa West Village. Nami originally had some strong wishes, but after hearing Luffy's suggestion, she changed her mind instantly and asked that the room on the top floor could only be hers. Luffy and Nami had an in-depth exchange of more than 2 hours in the room on the top floor where she stayed when she was a child, and he came to the balcony alone. Looking at the lively villagers below, Sanji who was drunk and dreaming with several young ladies in his arms, and Usopp who was bragging on several stacked tables, Luffy couldn't help but smile. Then, he took the Den Den Mushi that was eating leaves from Nami's work desk and put it on the balcony. After watching for a long time, Luffy dialed the special line. Blue blue blue. Click. The Den Den Mushi rang only 3 times before being answered immediately. Then neither party spoke. Luffy was surprised for a moment, then he guessed who was on the other end of the line. After taking a deep breath, Luffy smiled and said. Grandpa, would you like to meet me? I've been waiting for your call, you little brat. You didn't tell me you were in Kiki Yaxi village, did you? What? How did you know? You little. Come on, I'm just offshore, I'll be there soon, come out and talk to you later. Okay. At the same time, in the Navy branch not far from Kokoyasi village. Colonel Mouse was talking anxiously and angrily to the other end of the phone. You saw it. I sent all the 6 people's photos. Now please listen to me in detail about the most vicious pirate group in the East China Sea in recent years that is about to appear. The name of this pirate group is the Straw Hat Pirates. The recording Navy soldier on the opposite side was stunned for a moment and repeated. Are you sure that the name of this most vicious pirate group is the Straw Hat Pirates? Colonel Mouse knew what the other person was thinking and immediately rebuked. Didn't your instructors at headquarters teach you not to judge people by appearance? Even though they look like decent people, they are definitely very vicious pirates. Please listen to me carefully. Recording Navy career smiling faces. Okay, please go ahead. Colonel Mouse took a deep breath and said. Everyone in the Straw Hat Pirates, remember this. None of them are simple. Monkey D. Luffy, the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. I heard that before he defeated Arlong, he had a 50-50 match with Hawkeye. Colonel Monka of Shields Town, the Clown Buggy and Admiral Clique were all defeated by him. And his companion, the pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro. This man is also a tough guy. He actually took the initiative to challenge Hawkeye, and was recognized by Hawkeye and called him to surpass him. I think this pirate hunter Zoro must have received guidance from Hawkeye. Today he didn't make a move, and Luffy and the other few people wiped out the dragon pirates. And that Blackfoot Sanji, pay special attention. This guy is a newly rising pirate. His kicking skills are similar to those of the Redfoot Zeph back then. He killed Kruby, the main cadre of the dragon pirates, in a few moves. Another one is easier to check, that is the former vice-captain of the clique pirates, the demon Akin, whose original bounty was 12 million, and has now been confirmed to join the Straw Hat Pirates. After that, there is a guy named Usopp. We don't know what his abilities are yet. He is very mysterious. But he killed the leader of the dragon pirates, the fishman with a bounty of 5.5 million berries, without any injuries. He must be quite capable. The last one is a bonus. He is the navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates. He has almost zero combat power. You can decide for yourself. Have you memorized them all? I'll report it to my superiors immediately. I thought the other person was just making a fuss, but he was really shocked after hearing this. He didn't dare to neglect it and responded immediately. Good guy. After hearing this person named Monk D. Luffy's guys, are these pirates who swept across the East China Sea? Are they using these pirates to raise their own status? They lost to Hawkeye in a tie, and Zoro, a pirate hunter who challenged Hawkeye, appeared again. He might even have received Hawkeye's guidance. This group of people is really amazing. But why does this Monkey D sound so familiar? The Navy suppressed the thought in his mind and felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. It is indeed the most vicious pirate group in the East China Sea in recent years. After the Navy soldiers reported the detailed information, the people above did not dare to stay and reported it layer by layer. Soon, photos of Luffy and others appeared at the head of the Navy Intelligence Department. The first photo was Luffy's. He stood on the top of the stone pavilion of the Arlong Tower with his back to the sun, with his arms open, as if telling something. Not far away, hundreds of villagers were, trembling, and crawling on the ground, terrified. This photo, which was later regarded as the most representative bounty order of the era of extreme evil, was finally put on the bounty order. Zoro's photo is quite normal, with a sword in hand, and he looks quite casual. Sanji's photo is different from those funny male photos that Luffy knew in his previous life. This time, he is standing on one leg and kicking sideways, with a cigarette hanging from the corner of his mouth. He looks very unruly. With Sanji's formal suit, he is quite handsome. Akin has not changed much from his previous bounty order photo. On the contrary, Usopp has a photo with his left hand in his pocket and his right hand holding the right leg of the mermaid's corpse, and with the backlight effect. He looks like the second most evil person in the Straw Hat Pirates. The last photo is Nami's. However, Nami's photo is taken very beautifully. She is wearing Luffy's straw hat, sitting on the broken wall stones, leisurely crossing her legs, with her right hand on her knee, her left hand on her right hand, and looking into the distance with her cheek in her hand. Seeing these photos of Luffy's pirate group, the naval intelligence officers were a little embarrassed. Are you sure you are not taking artistic photos for them? However, the Straw Hat Pirates must be taken seriously. The leader made the decision. A meeting was held overnight to issue a bounty order for the Straw Hat Pirates. Such a vicious pirate group cannot be left in obscurity. If this continues, who knows how many civilians will be harmed and implicated. Yes. At this moment, the captain of the most vicious pirate group in the East China Sea in recent years was sitting on a cliff on the edge of an island in Coco Village, meeting someone that no one expected. Grandpa, how did you know I was here? Luffy took a bite of the barbecue and thought of something, then handed the barbecue in his hand over and said. Grandpa is eating barbecue. This is made by the cook on my ship. He is the best chef in the East China Sea. You should try it. It is absolutely delicious. You actually asked me that. Oh, thank you, I'll try the barbecue first. Garp sat on the other side of Luffy, and was originally going to teach Luffy a lesson, but the barbecue smelled too good. Hiss. It's so delicious. No wonder you dare to call him the best chef in the East China Sea. But I think it tastes a bit similar to sea Barati. Luffy turned to look at Garp in surprise and said. Grandpa, have you even been to sea Barati? Yeah, you made such a fuss. Garp raised his hand and hit Luffy on the head and yelled. Tell me, what do you want to do? Luffy looked at Garp in surprise and said. What do you mean by, what do I want to do? Grandpa, what did you say? Garp's face darkened, and he even stopped biting the barbecue, and turned to look at Luffy seriously and said. The things you did and said in Shield's Town. And the things you did and said today, all made me feel bad. How do you feel? Luffy grinned and changed the subject. Like the Revolutionary Army. Don't you know that? Garp's expression suddenly changed and he growled at Luffy. If you don't give me an explanation today, I will take you back today. Why did you take me back? To be a Marine. Luffy also turned around and looked at Garp face to face. Grandpa, I hung up the phone with you and asked you to clean up my mess all the way. Do you think I really just wanted you to clean up my mess? Of course not, you still want to exchange it for bounty. Garp picked his nose and glanced at Luffy, thinking, you are playing this trick on me, right? As expected of you. Luffy rolled his eyes. Let's talk business. Why did my old man, whom I've never met, defect from the Navy? 2 vice admirals in one family. How impressive. Even considering that he inherited your talent, plus his fruit ability, it's only a matter of time before he becomes an admiral, right? Grandpa, why do you think Dragon, a top figure in the Navy, defected from the Navy back then? Hearing Luffy say this, Garp's face turned gray, and he even lost interest for a moment. Luffy smiled slightly, raised his hand and patted Garp on the shoulder and said. Grandpa, don't worry, I won't follow the path of my cheap dad. Garp looked up instantly, with a glimmer of hope in his old eyes. Real. Luffy bared his teeth, looking at the old man's hopeful eyes, he didn't know how to answer him for a moment. But after thinking about it, he smiled and said. Of course it's true. To be honest, I don't think highly of what Dragon is doing. Helping other countries to rebel, letting them rebel against their own kings, and then patting their butts and walking away. This is not called revolution. This is called rioting. Garp listened and nodded and laughed. That's right, I think so too. Luffy also laughed. Right. What is revolution? Revolution is not a dinner party. If you want a revolution, you must first understand the nature of this world. Then you must have a complete set of guidelines and guiding ideologies, a complete set of laws, and a set of effective principles. If you can't do all these, even if you overthrow the whole world, it will be another group of celestial dragons that will be established on this basis. What do you think, Grandpa? Garp, who had been smiling and nodding frequently, gradually stiffened his smile, and his nodding movements became slower and slower. He looked at Luffy with shock and disbelief on his face. Good fellow. Your thoughts are even more comprehensive and complete than your father's. You still say you don't want to make a revolution. Garp thought of this and waved his hand very tiredly. Forget it, you have your own way to go. I can't stop you. You can do whatever you want. Luffy couldn't help but smile when he saw Garp's expression, sat over and put his arm around his shoulders and said. Grandpa, you don't have to think so much. Children and grandchildren have their own blessings. Anyway, you are a naval hero just to set a benchmark and get paid. Even in the current era of the 3 admirals, your reputation has gradually been erased. Since the world doesn't need naval heroes anymore, you should just enjoy your old age. Why worry about these? It's impossible that I want you to watch me being executed one day, right? You little brat, do you know how to talk? Garp was furious when he heard this and punched Luffy on the head. Seeing Luffy grinning, he suddenly laughed and said. Ha ha ha. You are right, there are always new people rising up in every era. The Navy doesn't need Navy heroes now. I won't worry about those people's troubles. I just hope you don't cause me any more trouble. But considering your situation, the Navy will know about the things in the East China Sea sooner or later. At that time, you will face threats from all sides. How about it? Are you scared? Luffy laughed. Grandpa, my last name is Monkey D. The grandfather and grandson laughed at each other. After eating the barbecue, Garp soared into the sky with the moon step, and flew towards the dog-headed warship that was faintly visible on the sea in the distance. He knew enough today. He didn't ask the rest, and there was no need to ask. He didn't even ask the questions he wanted to know at the beginning. For example, why did Luffy choose to go to sea as a pirate when he obviously had an idea in his mind? When did Luffy learn the 6 styles in hockey? These seemed to no longer matter to Garp. One thing he could be sure of was that his grandson had grown up. He was no longer the little boy who needed his care. Perhaps people with this surname are destined to not live a peaceful life. Even if it was not the case with himself in the past. The battle in the Valley of the Gods. Call. Luffy let out a long breath, looked at the sea in the distance and smiled slightly. Come out, all of you. Why are you hiding? Even if I don't have the observation haki, I can spot you. Not to mention my grandfather. After hearing Luffy's words, several figures immediately walked out of the woods. Luffy turned around and saw that it was Nami, Sanji, Zoro, Usopp and Kin, who were looking at him with burning eyes. Hiss. Sanji took a deep puff of cigarette and looked at Luffy with a serious expression and said. Luffy, this is the real purpose of your voyage, right? Zoro grinned. It seems that becoming the Pirate King is just a small goal you set for yourself. Usopp said with trembling legs. Lulu, don't worry, no matter what you want to do, I will stand by your side. Jin's usually gloomy face actually showed a rare smile at this moment. Mr. Luffy, I, Akin, am willing to sacrifice my life for your dream. Nami said nothing, but walked to Luffy's side and raised her hand to hold his. Luffy looked at them and just smiled, also without saying anything. Silence is better than words at this time. From the next day, Luffy and his group began their vacation trip to Kokoyasi village. After Luffy's decision, they planned to stay in Kokoyasi village for a week. At the same time, Sanji and others can also practice shaving and moon steps. But on the second day, Luffy, who was sitting cross-legged practicing armed color domineering, heard Usopp's panicked voice. Bad. Luffy, bad. We, all of us have been put on the shelf. Zoro, who was meditating, opened his eyes excitedly and laughed after hearing this. Is it finally here? What are our rewards? Quote. Really? Everyone. Sanji also jumped over excitedly. Am I there? Am I there? Usopp spread out all the bounties and yelled at them in horror. They have them all. Even Nami has a bounty. Nami, who was originally drinking coffee, spit on Luffy's face when she heard this, and then pointed at herself in disbelief and said. Why am I here? I'm just a small fry. Why do you treat me like this? Luffy wiped the coffee off his face, and was also very curious. He didn't expect the bounty to come out so quickly. It's only been a day. And this time, everyone in their group was wanted. It seems that this butterfly of his has really changed a lot of things. Thinking of this, Luffy curiously leaned over to look at the bounties in Usopp's hand. He wanted to see if it was consistent with the bounties he remembered. Soon Luffy showed a look of surprise. The first bounty was his. It was the photo of him standing on the top of the stone pavilion and shouting to the villagers. Monkey D. Luffy bounty. 50 million Baileys, dead or alive. The second bounty is for Zoro, a photo of him walking in Koko village. Pirate Hunter, Roronoa Zoro bounty. 30 million berries, dead or alive. The third bounty is for Ajin, same as the photo of him holding the iron baseball. Demon Mannequin bounty. 12 million berries, dead or alive. The fourth one is of Sanji, a picture of him in a suit doing a side kick. Blackfoot Sanji bounty. 11 million Baileys, dead or alive. The fifth photo is of Usopp. He is backlit and dragging the corpse of Chu, looking very ferocious. Bloody Hand Slayer Usopp bounty. 10 million Baileys, dead or alive. The sixth photo thinks she is Nami, an artistic photo of watching the battle with a straw hat on her chin. Little Thief Cat Nami bounty. 60,000 belly, dead or alive. The bounty for the entire Straw Hat crew is 113.06 million belly. After seeing these bounties, Nami was the first to get angry. She was stronger than Usopp and threw the bounty order to the ground and yelled. Will there be a bounty? Why am I only worth $60,000? Even if I sell my beauty, it's not worth $60,000, you navy. While Nami was complaining angrily, Luffy and his Straw Hat pirates finally became famous. Some were happy and some were sad. After a week of rest, Luffy and his crew finally set out on their journey to Rogue Town again. The next morning. This was the next morning on the way to Rogue Town. Today, Luffy and Kin were on guard together. It is worth mentioning that Luffy rubbed Nami again before dinner. It was because he was going to prepare for the lottery tonight. As usual, Luffy sat in the observation basin on the top of the main mast and closed his eyes to count the harvest this time. Soon, as he moved his mind, a blue light screen appeared in the dark vision. Perfect plot strategy for Aquaman. 1. Nami 92%. 2 rewards available. 2. Kaya 100% foldable. 3. Nokigo 100%. 5 rewards available, click to fold. Which reward should I claim first? Nakigo. You gained 5 points of Dao power. You gained 25 points of Dao power. You gained 25 points of Dao power. You gained 25 points of Dao power. You have obtained the 6 styles, finger gun close double angle bracket. Nice. As expected of Nami's sister, the things she drew were really great. Do you want to continue to receive rewards? Yes. You got the 3 perfect edition, close double angle bracket. You have gained 100 cubic meters of storage space, upgradable. Oh my god. Nami, my Nami. Luffy, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened them, his eyes full of joy and disbelief. He didn't expect to be able to draw such a good thing from Nami. You are worthy of being my European Emperor Nami. Luffy's face was full of joy, and he immediately opened the personal template to check the status. Aquaman's perfect plot strategy, personal template. Name: Monkey D. Luffy King Luffy. Fruit: human fruit, mythical beast, Nika form. Fruit moves: rubber pistol, rubber balloon, rubber bazooka, rubber machine gun, rubber tomahawk, rubber ultra strike, rubber whip, rubber jet. Master a skill: open double angle bracket armament hockey basic, 6 styles. Razor close double angle bracket ideographic, open double angle bracket 6 styles. Moonstep close double angle bracket ideographic, open double angle bracket second gear close double angle bracket ideographic, open double angle bracket 6 style. Amusement hand combination close double angle bracket ideographic, open double angle bracket 6 style. Finger gun close double angle bracket ideographic, open double angle bracket 3 perfect versions close double angle bracket. Capacity: 100 cubic meters of storage space. Dao Force 880. Story characters: female sign strategy progress 1. Nami 92%. 2. Kaya 100% click to collapse. 3. Nokigo 100% click to collapse. Seeing that the personal template had added another ability column, Luffy nodded in satisfaction. He jumped down from the observation basin, walked to a wooden box on the deck, raised his hand and touched it. Then, under Jin's shocked gaze, the wooden box disappeared directly in front of him. Swish. The next moment, as Luffy raised his hand and waved, the wooden box appeared in another place. Swish, swish, swish. After Luffy tried it several times, he suddenly laughed out loud. Mr. Luffy, what are you doing? After watching for a long time, Jin finally couldn't help but ask. Luffy, what kind of ability is this? Not only him, but also Sanji, who got up early to prepare breakfast, was shocked when he saw Luffy's ability and exclaimed. This made Usopp in the cabin open his eyes in a daze. What happened? Then Nami opened the door of the warehouse with a confused look on her face after hearing the noise and walked out. Luffy saw that they were almost awake, so he performed it for them again and laughed. How is it? This is a new ability I have mastered. This ability allows me to have 100 cubic meters of storage space. As long as I touch something, I can store it in it. Of course, living things are not allowed. Quote. Nani. Usopp, who had just stuck his head out, exclaimed when he heard Luffy's words. Luffy, aren't you a user of the rubber gum fruit? How come you also have spatial abilities? That's right. Nami and the others were also very confused. Luffy looked at them puzzled and said. Who said I am a rubber man who ate the emotion fruit? As a psychic, it is normal for me to have space ability, right? Oh. Everyone nodded in understanding. Normal as hell. Nami rolled her eyes. I really don't know what's going on with you devil fruit users, you're all so weird. Ha 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 ha. Luffy laughed when he heard that. Sanji excitedly took out a piece of meat from the kitchen and gave it to Luffy. Luffy, try storing this piece of meat in your spatial ability. Luffy saw Sanji's action and understood his idea, and said with a smile. You want to try whether my storage space can keep food fresh, right? Smart. Sanji gave a thumbs up. Luffy nodded and said, I just want to try it too. Swish. As Luffy's finger poked the piece of meat, the meat immediately disappeared in Sanji's hand. Nami, who was about to go back to catch up on her sleep, suddenly stopped and said, Your ability is so convenient, so we can store the money on the ship into your personal space after leaving the ship. In this way, we don't have to worry about losing so much money anymore, right? Yeah, indeed. Usopp clapped his fist against his palm to show his approval. Nami smiled with a relieved look. Hey, I got more than 30 million Baileys from your grandfather a few days ago. Including the money spent on buying supplies in Kokoyashi village, we still have 130 million Baileys. I feel uneasy even if I put so much money in my sleeping place. But if I don't have money with me, I can't sleep well either. Nami said she was very distressed. Luffy laughed and said, How about this, take 100 million and put it into my space ability. The remaining 30 million Baileys are used for daily expenses. I will give you the money after you use it up. Snap. Nami snapped her fingers. Good idea. Then Luffy went to Nami's room to store the Bailey, and this storage lasted for more than an hour. It was not until Sanji called them to eat that the two came out of the bathroom. On the morning of the third day, Luffy and his group arrived at the port of Rogue Town. At the same time, in the Rogue Town naval base, Smoker leaned back in his office chair with a cigar in his mouth, looking at the bounty orders on the table and muttered. First, he killed that jerk monkey and shared the 100 million berries that were looted with the townspeople. Then he rescued the townspeople of another town from Buggy the Clown. Then he killed Click, but accepted his vice captain. And then he helped Coco Village to kill the dragon pirates. Is he both good and evil? Monkey D. Luffy, what do you want to do? Call. Smoker exhaled a puff of smoke and smiled. Forget it, no matter what you want to do, Rogue Town is the only way for you to reach the Great Route. Let me see what you are capable of. On the merry. Luffy handed them several masks carved by Zoro and said, We are now wanted people, so we need to be more careful. Each of you wear a mask, and it is best not to take it off. After buying things, you can meet me at the execution platform. Hearing Luffy's words, everyone subconsciously took the ghost mask with half of the face. This was carved by Zoro overnight according to Luffy's instructions. Nami looked at Luffy in confusion and said, Luffy, why are you going to the execution platform? Luffy pressed his straw hat and smiled. I want to go to the execution ground to see the man who changed an era, the place where the pirate King Roger died. Everyone nodded thoughtfully after hearing this. Then Luffy asked each of them to take 3 million to buy what they need. After all, there is still some distance to the Grand Line, and there is basically no place as big as Rogue Town to replenish supplies. Hearing Luffy's words, several people waved excitedly and shouted that the captain was generous. Only Nami pouted and looked unhappy. But when Luffy indicated that she could buy any clothes she wanted and he would reimburse her, Nami smiled. After getting off the boat, everyone left. They always have to give them some private space. Soon, Luffy also put on the half-wooden ghost mask and jumped off the boat. As soon as he left the port, Luffy saw people coming and going on the beach. As expected, it is the only way to the Grand Line. It is really lively. After looking around, Luffy suddenly saw a white-haired man sitting on a four-wheeled motorcycle. Seeing this, Luffy's mouth curled up slightly, then he strode towards him and smiled. Hey, white-haired uncle, how can I get to the execution platform? The white-haired man was stunned for a moment, obviously not expecting someone to come to him to ask for directions. After reacting, he raised his hand and pointed behind him and said, This road behind me, turn left and go straight and you will arrive. Oh, thank you. Why are you going to the execution ground, little brother? Me. Luffy leaned on his straw hat and looked at Smoker with a smile. I heard that this place is also called the town of the beginning and the end. So I want to go and see where the Pirate King died. After saying that, Luffy turned and left. At the same time, he lamented that the level of face blindness in the pirate world is indeed beyond common sense. The white-haired man leaning on the four-wheeled motorcycle is naturally Smoker. The other party is obviously waiting for him. If it is according to the plot direction he knows. But he didn't expect that he didn't recognize him even when he approached. In his previous life memory, Luffy didn't even wear a mask. Of course, this is also because the current smoker is no threat to him at all, so Luffy dared to boldly walk up to him and ask for directions. After eating and shopping all the way, Luffy finally came to the execution square. And Smoker, who was at the beach before, was thinking more and more wrong. The Straw Hat Pirates. Straw Hat Luffy. According to Cocoa Village's schedule, they should arrive today. Wait, wasn't that kid wearing a straw hat just now? Thinking of this, Smoker suddenly blushed and growled. Good boy. You better pray that you are not the Straw Hat Boy. Otherwise, I will make you pay. You actually played a trick on me. Chi Kesho. At the same time, on the other side of Rogue Town, Buggy and his gang jumped off the boat with hoods on. He growled at the crowd. We, the Buggy Pirates, came here today for only one purpose. Straw Hat Boy. Straw Hat Boy. Is it still him? It's Straw Hat Boy. Find him for me. Remember that. Yes. The members of Buggy's pirate group dared to be angry but not to speak. They had already decided that even if they found the Straw Hat Boy, they would not report it to their captain. Lest he go and get killed again. Don't you think about your own weight and dare to touch a pirate worth 50 million. You haven't been beaten enough last time, right? Kabuki and Mochi looked at each other and saw the lingering fear in each other's eyes. They tacitly didn't tell Buggy about the last time, so Buggy naturally didn't know about it. The other members of the pirate group finally didn't tell the truth under their stern warnings. As for the other side, Aurita, who had become a great beauty, found that something was wrong at this time. She smiled at Buggy and said, how about this, Bucky? We each take a team to search separately. This way it will be more efficient. Bucky hesitated for a moment and nodded. Okay, let's do it this way. Men on the left, women on the right, meet at the execution platform, is that okay? No problem. Everyone responded and separated immediately. In the middle of the conversation, Aurita began to ask about the members of the Buggy Pirates. The Buggy Pirates knew that this woman had eaten the devil fruit and was a person of the same level as their captain. Under her questioning, they naturally did not dare to neglect her. So they told her about what happened that day. After listening, Aurita was a little absent-minded and murmured. Monkey D. Luffy, sister likes you more and more. On the other side, Luffy came to the execution square, holding a big meat leg in his left hand and a big meat leg in his right hand, eating with his mouth full of oil. There is no other way. His fruit ability has an extremely strong recovery ability, and the consumption ability is naturally very strong. Otherwise, Luffy would not be able to improve so quickly. Looking at the people coming and going in the execution square, and even many people taking pictures, Luffy knows that many people have the same purpose as him. It seems that there are quite a few travelers in this world. Luffy glanced over and saw that they were not all pirates, but mostly travelers or merchants. That's interesting. Suddenly Luffy's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously turned his head and looked around. What was that? Soon the target was locked. It was the execution platform. It seemed that every time I got closer to the execution platform, my heartbeat would speed up. What does this mean? Luffy was a little confused, and stuffed the two big meat legs into his mouth and swallowed them in front of the shocked eyes of the people around him. Hiss. Seeing Luffy eating like this, the people around him immediately gasped. Seeing this, Luffy immediately bowed to them and said, excuse me. Oh no. The people on the opposite side also bowed in return. Luffy chuckled, and then walked towards the execution platform step by step. With every step closer to the execution platform, Luffy could feel his heartbeat speeding up. What does this mean? Don't tell me that there is a kind of inheritance of the child of destiny in the pirate world. It seems possible. After all, this is the pirate world. Luffy scratched his head and looked up from under the execution rack. He was thinking, is it more eye-catching to use the ability or to use the moon step to attract more attention? It doesn't seem to matter. Forget it, who cares? Luffy thought of this and no longer hesitated. He bent his knees and bounced upwards. Then, his feet stomped in the air, making a few, bang bang, sounds. Under the shocked eyes of the people around him, he was on the execution platform in the blink of an eye. Wow! Did I see that right just now? That person can fly. It seems to be true. How did he fly to the execution platform? I didn't notice, but why was that boy going to the execution platform? It seems that it is illegal to go to the execution platform without permission, right? Just as everyone below the execution platform was discussing, Luffy's body suddenly shook, and a flash of red light flashed in his eyes. Thanks for watching.